What's good, my internet friends? It's been a while, but your boy's back with a special topic for you guys. The question of who your art influences and inspirations are is so common when you talk amongst your artsy friends, so I thought I'd talk about some of mine. Really, what inspired this video was a recent tweet and an Instagram story that I shared about how I want, my art to be a mix of Terrence Whitlow, Hebrew Brantley, Paper Frank, Kimjungi, and Edward Hopper. I also said that it's like every time I make something, I'm doing my best bad impersonation of one or all of those artists. What I meant by that is I just felt like my style has developed to include the DNA of all of my art influences. I think that's probably a fair statement to make of all artists. We all are influenced by someone, and a lot of times we may have gotten into art because of how awesome we felt when consuming the art of someone else. If anything, my style likely has the DNA of way more artists than the ones I initially mentioned in that tweet. But with that said, I thought I'd sit down and think about, at first I thought I'd think about my top 10 art influences, and I was trying to rank them, and it was just becoming too much. So I just thought about my top 6 influences, both old and recent. So let's begin. So, coming in at number 6 is Edward Hopper. Edward Hopper is an American painter who died in the late 60s, according to Wikipedia. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm this Edward Hopper superfan or anything, because he's a bit of an influence that kind of comes and goes for me. And what I mean by that is I usually think of him when I'm trying to depict a scene that's like almost very regular, real life-esque, but with an atmospheric, vibey undertone. The guy just has his way of making regular shit like changing clothes in your bedroom look super cool and super wavy. His infamous painting Nighthawks, which I'll pull up here, is such a vibe to me, and I'm sure many others would feel the same way. And when you dive deeper into his work, you find so many other pieces that just seem like these stills from a movie captured on canvas. I don't know, I love the feeling I get from his work, and sometimes I strive to give off that feeling in my own work. So it's like I think about him in those moments, like when I'm trying to paint like a cool scene or something. I'm just like, is this as wavy as Nighthawks? I don't know. It probably isn't, but that's what I'm a shoot for when I'm going for that, at least. And I'm probably only putting him on, this top 6 list just because he's like been top of mind recently. You could say he's influencing me in recent works lately. Maybe if this was like 7 months ago, he wouldn't have been on my top 6 list. But hey, he's in there today. Moving on. All right, so next I wanted to say that at number 5, really the number 5 and number 4 slots are 2 artists that are kind of interchangeable in terms of their rank and influence on my work. And I don't know, I couldn't decide who ranks higher, to be real with you. So let's just start with Paper Frank. Let's call Paper Frank number 5 right now. Paper Frank is probably my first Instagram art influence from like the last, 6 years, when I really started to pay attention to artists on Instagram. And, it kind of became, I kind of became inspired to grow a community through Instagram. I fell in love with Paper Frank's ability to captivate you with his original characters as well as his fan art. His fan art has emotion behind it. It wasn't just like, here's my rendition of Goku. It was more than that every time, and still is. He inspired me to really explore original characters that I had in my head but never fully expressed before. And his use of Copic markers is pretty breathtaking, and it really made me want to get better at using markers and just color in general in my work. His acrylic paintings are definitely like awesome as well. He does acrylic, spray paint, pretty much everything. I don't know if he oil paints actually, but his marker pieces really made me feel like I had to step it up with my work. And his work just in general made me want to create iconic characters and develop my coloring style more and more, just because of how I was feeling when, Paper Frank would drop some new art. I'm just like, that's fire. I want to make fire. End of story. There's probably a lot more I could say about him, but let's move on to number 4 or 5, depending on the day or the hour. The other artist that I think is tied with Paper Frank is Terrence Whitlow, or Terrence Unchained on Instagram. I feel like I discovered him later than Paper Frank, for sure later than Paper Frank, but maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. And I've learned like so much about how to make marker and ink art look painterly. Both of these artists, Paper Frank and Terrence, primarily use markers, or at least that's what we see mostly on Instagram. And the difference is, I feel like Paper Frank never really posts videos, but Terrence Unchained posts, or at least he used to post a lot of videos. So because of that, I just was tuned in and glued to his page. And he was doing things I didn't think we were like allowed to do with markers. The guy would lay down a base layer of like a random color and then start using the colors he actually wanted to color his characters with. Like I'm thinking of like a time lapse where like he was drawing a robot, so you're thinking robot, gray tones, and this dude like filled the whole sketch in red, and then started to add gray tones and blue tones, and then started to add like white paint and ink, and it was crazy. Like the way he would push and pull with like lights and shadows by like bringing Pentel ink brush pens into the mix. It's kind of amazing to watch, honestly. And it's easy to pick up on the techniques once your brain kind of relaxes from your initial amazement. It's like the first time I used markers, for whatever reason, my brain thought I had to only use markers. And Terrence showed me that, you can add to your marker drawings and give them a fine art feel as well by using more than just, the marker itself. I don't know what it is. It's like your brain kind of puts you in a box on its own sometimes when you pick up like, if I'm using colored pencils, that's all I'm using. But you can mix these things and it'll result in something better every time. And that's why, they're Paper Frank or, Terrence are on this list. Coming in at number 3 is Akira Toriyama, and he's probably my oldest art influence, so there's no way I could make any list without mentioning him. If you didn't know, Akira Toriyama is most notably known as the creator of Dragon Ball, amongst other mangas, and he's done he's done character design on video games like Dragon Quest, Chrono Trigger, etc. You could Google the guy. You probably know, but just to give a brief background here. Anyway, growing up, I think Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z single-handedly forced me into becoming an artist. This was, I was maybe like 4th, 5th grade. But yeah, there was a period in my life where all I used to draw was Dragon Ball Z characters. And it was usually from memory a lot of the time, because I would be drawing characters that I just watched in that day's episode. And the only time I was able to draw from reference is like when my parents took me to the library and I was able to print an image of one of my favorite Dragon Ball characters. Yes, people, there was a time when, the internet and access to a printer and shit like that wasn't, commonplace. You had to go to a library or a computer lab and and pay like 10 cents to print an image, and it was in black and white. This was an archaic period, I guess, to some of you young viewers and listeners. But anyway, that's what I had to do. Anyway, Toriyama's character design, you know, his world building, his environments, his vehicle design, and even his costume design have a huge influence on how I create my own, you know, original characters and the world that they live in. I definitely, yeah, I couldn't do this video without mentioning him. Shout out to Toriyama, yo. Let's move on. All right, at number 2 is Kimjungi. And I honestly don't even know how to describe this dude because he's kind of nuts. I discovered him maybe 3 years ago, and I've been mesmerized ever since. This guy can draw anything from his vast memory bank with no reference at all and construct it perfectly in ink, of all things. The guy's an alien, okay? And even though he's a recent influence, he's been very impactful. When I first discovered him, I was maybe like 27, 28 years old, and I had been drawing for a couple decades at this point. But for whatever reason, I thought, you know, I was pretty good at drawing, and I was probably pretty cocky too. At least I know I was. I knew I had more to learn, but for whatever reason, I thought I was pretty fire already. Then I discovered this dude, Kimjungi, and realized I was complete trash. And it was a humbling experience, and probably the best thing to happen to me artistically, because it re-sparked a desire to get better and better every day. And I feel like I must have like lost that desire at some point. For whatever reason, I just thought I was solid at drawing, and I was only trying to like, you know, I was like, oh, you know, my art growth is more centered on coming up with better concepts for paintings and, you know, maybe learning some better painting techniques. I'm so good at drawing already. Like, I have it all figured out. And I don't know, the discovery of an artist that's like hundreds of thousands of miles ahead of you might humble you and inspire you to get better again. And that's kind of what happened to me. But yeah, because, you know, I feel like my drawings since discovering him have improved exponentially. And I think it's because it just made me study things more. It made me more like aware of my surroundings. Like, I would just look at things differently. I was more observant, more studious, whether it was, you know, anatomy, perspective, body poses, or just like being better at achieving 3 dimensions in my drawings. All of that just became more important, and when it did, I just got better at it, you know, from practice, obviously. But I don't know, his work is incredible, and hearing him talk about how he draws literally all the time makes me wish and want to draw all the time, which at the very least made me draw more than I used to before discovering Kimjungi. And because of that, I got better at drawing, and everything else improved as well, like painting, coloring, all that other stuff. So Kimjungi, shout out to you. Your greatness made me feel shitty, but it made me want to not be shitty, and that's what's important. It didn't really make me feel shitty, but you know what I mean. Like, it was like one of those things where it was like, oh, okay, that's what good drawing looks like. Okay, got some work to do, let's do it. All right, we're down to the number 1 spot here for my biggest art influence. And if you haven't guessed by now from the intro of the video or from just following me on social media, it's Hebrew Brantley. And I think it will always be Hebrew Brantley. Hebrew Brantley is an artist from Chicago like myself, and I discovered him back in my graffiti days almost 10 years ago, but I feel like I really started to like study him and watch what he was doing in the past 6 or 7 years. I feel like he kind of laid out a blueprint on how to successfully build and create your own art business from an original character and world that you've created just in your paintings. And the guy's a genius. Like, he's literally created something so original and then been able to like merchandise it in business in a genius way. But more than the business side, the number one reason narrative is so important in my work is probably because of Hebrew Brantley, because like I learned that that narrative could be prominent in fine art as well, because of him. I remember going to one of his exhibits, maybe 4 years ago now. Remember going to it and feeling like his paintings were all from the same storyboard. And I was like, this is next level. Like, I wanted to achieve that in my own work with my own characters and stories. And it wasn't something that I was aware of or that I had seen other, big fine artists doing. Just the idea of like two paintings, not that they're in a series, like just two random paintings in one exhibit were like in the same scene but at different angles, from different perspectives, with like characters looking, or the subject looking a bit different in each one, but it's like, oh, this is the same scene. If this was a movie, this is probably the storyboard used for that movie. I'm rambling here, but bear with me. His most recent exhibit was called Nevermore, and it was like walking into another dimension. He's been able to make, his character, the Flyboy, a household name, and I feel like I always move with what would Hebrew do in the back of my head when it comes to making decisions for my overall, artistic brand. There's so much more I could say, but it might be better to save that for like a Hebrew Brantley super fan or appreciation video. But yeah. All right. Now that you've heard about all of my art influences, I want to hear about yours. So drop them in the comments, engage with your boy, and like this video and share it so the algorithms can treat me better. I'm struggling out here. Help me out. Peace. So you actually stuck around, huh? You think you better than everybody, huh? Well, you are, man. You are. I'm just playing, man. Just a guy that plays too much, If you made it this far, you probably know this is the Patreon shout-out section where I thank my patrons for holding me down. There ain't many of you. There could be more, Check me out, bruh. $1 a month, support your boy. $3 a month, you might get something out of it. 5? You might really get something out of it. But 10? Oh man, we pretty much go together at that point. Check me out. Until next time.